Welcome back to Ultra Uncovered. I'm Corinne Shalvoy.
And I'm Russell Ditzworth.
And we have a special Black Canyon Ultras debrief episode today. Honestly, I reached out to Russ because I was trying to put together an Instagram post and I was like, there's way too many things that happened this past weekend in the span of 3 days. And I think it would be more interesting just to talk through some of it because honestly, I was having a hard time articulating my thoughts on my own personal race. Russell, you ran the 100K out at Black Canyon. You were there supporting all of our friends. We had a big contingent from the Castle Rock Run Club out there doing both distances. All of our friends had varying experiences, as you can imagine with ultras, some great, some maybe a little bit disappointing for what they were hoping for. So we just wanted to talk about it and then also just kind of banter a little bit on the general reactions to kind of what happened in the elite fields, how Black Canyon has evolved as a race, talk a little bit about my first experience in the field commentating versus being in a studio, and some of the other fun things that we got to experience throughout the weekend. So, yeah.
And in addition to that, at the end, we are going to tease some of the races that we will be covering in the upcoming months here for Ultra Uncovered. So stay tuned. We'll talk a little bit about that. We do have a special guest announcement at the end of the podcast as well. So stay tuned and you'll hear kind of where we're going with the podcast. You know, Corinne, I had been messaging the Castle Rock Run Club thread a few times saying, you know, this is a weekend that's going to go down in club history. And there's so many stories and so many fun things that happened and so many people had so many varying experiences. I do think that that's the case. Just to set the stage for folks, I think there were 6 of us plus a friend of mine from my work that ran the 100K. So that's 7 that I was tracking in the 100K. And then there was another 5 that all ran the 50K the next day. So that's 12 racers. And in all, I think we had maybe 15 or 16 people in Prescott and in Mayer and in Black Canyon City and in Deep Canyon Ranch and in Anthem.
Staying all over the
following
place.
the race.
Yeah, and our group actually, the majority of the group, you included, stayed in the same house that we stayed in a couple of years ago when we came out here. So for anyone who's not aware, the Castle Rock Run Club tends to do like one big adventure all together or one race a year or so where we kind of all show up and make it a big kind of memory making weekend and everybody races. We've done the Black Canyon rim to rim to rim in the past all together and Gorge Waterfalls. And a couple of years ago, we went to Black Canyon and it was a lot of people's first 100Ks. It was a lot of people's kind of first time running on the Black Canyon Trail. So this was awesome to be able to go back. And some people were stepping up in distance. Some people were attempting a 50K or an ultra for the first time. And it was really neat to be able to kind of live the race through all of our friends' eyes and just, I don't know, so impressed with everybody's attitudes, despite, you know, if they had hard days or not. So it's a great group we have, as our friend Chris says, best damn run club on the planet. So it was a good time and definitely one that we will remember for a while.
Yeah, and I thought it was neat. I think Black Canyon is unique in that way. I did hear that there was a large contingent from New York City that came down, a large group of women from New York City that came down as a club. The other big club that I thought was very impressionable was the Cowgill Collective from the Northwest. And it was like, you know, you'd see the cow print and you knew what that was from. And so I think an event like Black Canyon really lends itself to be able to be one of those events that you can bring an entire club down to and really enjoy and support each other. And running the 100K race on Saturday did not keep me from helping support on Sunday the 50K folks and being at the finish line and things like that.
Yeah. And we saw that even in the elite field. I mean, it's turning into very much a, you know, who's who of ultra running, like you see at Western or you see at Javelina, where even if people aren't racing, you kind of have so many of the pros and elites in the sport showing up to support one another. And like you said, you know, if they're not racing the 100K, maybe they're crewing and then they're going to race the 50K back and forth. And this was the first year the 50K was a World Trail Major short distance event. And we definitely saw much more stacked fields, I would say, in the 50K. But I'm still baffled, and we'll get into it later, as to the times that are run in the 50K during the 100K and how those compare to the 50K standalone race. It's just a testament to how fast Black Canyon is, some of the times that are run, and then people continuing to hold, essentially a similar pace for another 50K. So it's, I think, and I heard from a lot of people that had not been on the trail before, it was, as we've always said, way more technical than they planned on it. Our friend Gretchen, who ran the 50K, I loved that she recently posted that the Black Canyon course eats runners up, and my legs were on the menu. I love that. That's a great description, because we talk, it's kind of similar to how they describe Western. Western's a fast course. It's a net downhill course. When you're out at Western, there's a lot of climbing, even beyond a 3,000 foot ascent at the very beginning up a ski hill. So, even though these are quote unquote fast races, the terrain is a bit unforgiving, and it really does play to different people's strengths. And I think you see that kind of play out a lot in the elite fields.
It gives a new respect to, people see the course, they see the course profile, then they see some of these athletes running the times, and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But when you get out there and you're there and you're seeing how fast and how quickly they're moving over terrain that is like, in some cases, I would just consider it like large marbles. Like, you're running down large marbles, they're going to move underneath you. You got to figure it out and make sure you don't eat it.
Mm-hmm.
When you're pressing the pace and really pushing, that can be very hard. And it's very impressive that the athletes that are out there are doing that so quickly, efficiently, and able to make that work.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest differences, I think, is this, people trying to move across it so quickly, and you combine that with the rockiness, and it absolutely makes for a lot of bloody knees, a lot of falls. I actually, when we were flying back, we were sitting right behind a woman who had run the 50K, who I saw in the med tent at the end of the race, who had hit her head, broken her glasses, broken her earbud. She had her head wrapped at the finish line in the med tent, and we saw her again at the airport. And I was like, "Man, are you okay? And how are you doing?" And she's like, "It's just soft tissue, but man, it bled so much and broke my glasses. So frustrating." And I think she continued running another 3 miles to finish the race after having that major fall. So it's a tough one. There's a lot of blood.
Everything in the desert wants to either kill you or sting you or do something. There's no soft landings in the desert.
Yeah, I actually got choyed for the first time. I was going back to grab Graham at the end of his race, and I just wasn't paying attention. I stepped off to the side, and all of a sudden there's 2 giant cholla cactus in the side of my leg. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm just rocking around here. And I had to grab a couple rocks and pull them out of myself. And I was like, geez, you have to pay attention constantly. It's a wild
really
environment. So, all right, well, we're going to get into, first thing we want to talk about is your race, Russ. So we want to hear a little bit about, you've done Ks in the past, but just give a little background on some of the other races you've done of this distance. You've been at Black Canyon before, so leading in, kind of how you were thinking about this as your next 3K attempt.
Yeah, so like I've mentioned before on the podcast, I am on my trek to acquiring Western States qualifiers in order to keep putting my name into the lottery. And I've put my name into the lottery at the end of 2023 and at the end of 2024, following the Leadville Trail 100, which was my first 100-mile race, my only 100-mile race at this point, and at the end of 2024, after completing the Never Summer 100K. So those 2 races are the only times that I've gone to the 100K distance within the middle of a race. And Leadville obviously is a 100-miler. You hit 100K at Twin Lakes coming back. So that was pretty late into the night. I think maybe like 16 or 18 hours into the race for me. And then the Never Summer 100K is famously quite a bit longer than 100K. I think it was like 67 miles. I had a quite the event there. I'll actually link to my Substack race report if people are interested in reading about that. It was quite the
Absolutely.
journey.
They should
But
check that out. It's super mountainous, heavy
yes,
vert race,
yes,
high altitude.
high altitude, tons of climbing. They also have a 60K, which is a lot of the awesome parts of the 100K. Anyway, I finished that in about 19 hours. So I was looking at this Black Canyon 100K as like really an opportunity of like, okay, I could be able to run most of this, and man, I feel like I've got a 100K PR in the bag, so no problem. And I have run Black Canyon 60K twice, so I've seen the first half of the course a couple of times. I know exactly what to expect in terms of aid stations, in terms of preparation. I feel like the day we had was also comparable temperature wise to the days that I was there in 2022 and in 2023. I felt very comfortable on the start line, felt very comfortable going into the event and feeling like, okay, I know I've covered this distance before. I feel very practiced with fueling and nutrition, and I know what to expect in this first part, and I'm gonna, I'm not gonna press, but I'm gonna let myself run comfortably in those first miles, and kind of see where that puts me for the second half of the race. And so not to spoil the ending, for a great story, I did hit a 50K PR.
Okay.
Right before you get into Deep Canyon Ranch, I looked down at my watch and hit the exact 31-mile mark, and I was still slightly under 5 hours. So I was very, very happy with that, and ran really well for the first half of the race. I think I came into Deep Canyon Ranch in 5:03, and unfortunately, I dealt with some leg cramping and just some really tough energy lows in that second half of the race. And the end result was that I ran the second 50K in about 9 hours. So, hey, I still succeeded. I got this the little coin for World Trail Majors, and I got the buckle at the end.
Yes.
And I got the time necessary to put my name into the lottery for Western States. But
awesome.
I will be saying that I do not intend, when I run Western States, I do not intend to walk the last 50 miles. So I'm going to have to figure some things out in terms of runnable, long, kind of beat up your leg, hot. I think the heat makes more of an impact than people think. I'm training in Colorado all season, and it's cold. It's great for running, but I think the heat does things to kind of your nutrition plan that maybe are a little bit unexpected. And even if I think I'm drinking enough, I've got 2 or 3 bottles between every aid station that I'm either consuming or using for topical cooling, and maybe it wasn't enough. And I think maybe the salt mix wasn't enough. But that's the cool thing about ultra marathons, is there's always a puzzle to be figuring out, and we get a few chances every so often to test these things out. And we can test things in training and practice and do these things, but sometimes until you're doing the really long events, you don't get that opportunity to learn. And I took the opportunity, and honestly, even though that second half of the race wasn't what I wanted from a performance perspective, it was everything that I wanted from an experience. And I was in high spirits the entire time, regardless of whether I was moving well or not. And that was a function of the people around me, the people that came to support the race, the people that I met during the race. I spent 2 hours with Ashley Polson just running, and she was out there helping me, talking to me, walking me through what was happening. And, we were just kind of working through it. And it was that's an experience I won't forget. So that was great. And, met up with some of the different folks that we were running the 100K together with. I remember when our teammate Jacob, who you also coach, came up to me after Hidden Treasure, and we were running together for maybe a mile or so. And
that's about mile 15?
Yeah, about mile 15. Todd and I were talking and saying, Jacob's back there running a smart race. We know he is, and we know he'll come up to us at some point, and I'm going to have to let him go at that point too. So I hung on to him for a little while, and I made him stop to take a picture. But I'm pretty sure that's the only time that he stopped the entire race.
He told me he ran every step, and that was a big goal of his, and that is not an easy thing to do at Black Canyon. So, yeah, he had a fantastic day. It was really exciting to see it all come together for him because he gutted out a 32-hour finish at 30
At High Lonesome,
at
High
High
Lonesome for
Lonesome.
his first 100. And, that can be a thing too, right? That first 100 miler that you take on. And I know this about myself too, that finish just meant so much that you're willing to kind of go to the well and go, you overextend and it doesn't even really matter. You're still willing to like continue unless you're completely injured or something to that effect. From an energy standpoint or the way your legs are feeling standpoint, you're going to get that finish. And his recovery from a race like High Lonesome was not great. Like he wasn't running after that for quite a while, but he has come back from that. And I would say this is Jacob Priscuda. I think he finished, Todd said he finished 45th male and basically had a mere second half to his first half and probably just ate up the entire field that went out there.
Yeah.
So great.
I think when I talked to him at the finish, he said, I don't think that could have gone any better, which is like, it's really hard to say that about very many races. So sounds like he just had the day that we all kind of knew he was maybe ramping up to have, which is so cool to see.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. So on your race, Russ, a couple of cool things happened. One, you were famously on the live stream for about 10 minutes. At which aid station was this?
I was sitting down at Table Mesa with Dave
with 12
and
miles to
Todd
go.
and Amy. So that's 12 miles to go. I was sitting in a little chair and she came up with her phone camera and said, all right, well, you're on the live stream. And I wasn't sure if I had audio at all or anything, but I was hamming it up with Dave and with Amy. And I think I described myself as like ultra drunk. Like I was just in a phase where I was very happy. I was happy to be there, but I was also, my legs were completely trashed. Like it was like things were not going great. And I knew that, but at the same time, I was just having the best time. And I was really enjoying being in that aid station and talking with Dave and Todd and Amy. And at some point, Dave is like, all right, Russ, you got to get out of here. Like, you can't keep sitting here. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. All right, I'll get up. We'll get going here. But I was joking to the live stream, if it had audio, that now if somebody like AGW was on the other side, he'd be like, what is this guy doing sitting in the chair, smiling and laughing? He needs to get up and start moving.
Exactly. That's amazing. And then also, I don't know if you want to share this, but I mean, I think it's a testament to people's character when it's like, it's become really rough. Your legs are gone. You're just really kind of struggling to get to the finish, but you keep a good attitude. You stay positive. You appreciate the fact that you're out there still suffering. And it's really easy to also go the other way and get angry and get grumpy and get, pissed off and just, it's just, I really appreciate the fact that, you kept such a positive attitude. It's something not everybody does, to the point where it sounds like you're also making up songs about a lot of our members. And like, pro tip, way to pass time if you're just having to kind of walk or shuffle is get creative. I mean, it's amazing that your brain was working like this to be able to like come up with songs about each of our members of our group.
Well, I will say this too. It is, even though the legs were pretty trashed, the stomach felt great. And I wasn't able to drink as much as maybe I wanted, but like I never felt sick to my stomach. And I do think that can also have just a big impact on people's attitudes. Like if your stomach is bad, you are in a bad place. But from an overarching perspective, I was, telling myself, listen, I'm out here. This is really a fleeting moment. Even if I'm going to be out here another 3 or 4 hours, it's going to be gone in the snap of a finger. And I'm going to be in the middle of the next week in the regular rhythm of life. And let's just, the moon is out. I'm by myself right now and people are passing me. And
because you didn't have any pacers.
No pacers. Yeah, no pacers. Just, a crew, which was awesome. It was awesome to have that. But no pacers. And not only were the people that were jogging going by me, I was kind of okay with that. It was the walkers that were going by me that was starting to get a little bit like, okay, now what's happening? People are just walking by me. And so at that point, I did turn off the headlamp and was like, I want to see I'm not moving very fast. I want to see how good I can see with just the moon. And it wasn't bad at 22 minutes per mile. You can avoid lots of rocks at 22 minutes a mile. No, it was fine. So I turned my headlamp off, and I kind of was in my own head a little bit. And you're right, yeah, I was so sitting making up songs about people in the club, or just little chants to kind of repeat over and over again. Yeah, those were fun. I'm not sure how many of those people heard. They might have heard it a little bit. Some stranger walking with no headlamp, chanting little songs to himself through the darkness. And a few people did ask me, like, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need a light?" And I was like, "I think I'm okay. I'm just enjoying a stroll in the desert by the moonlight." So
yeah. No, it's
fine.
I love it. I think it's awesome. It's just a shame that those chants were not further documented for future use, either in video or in written form. So we'll have to hopefully get to another I don't know, maybe 100-miler where you can get back in that mindset and start making up some more songs. But congratulations on finishing.
Thank you.
That is something that not everybody did. There were, as always, a lot of DNFs at the race this year. Again, I didn't see the exact DNF rate, but surprisingly, I think it was quite low when I was in the field commentating. I had heard there had only been like 9 DNFs at Black Canyon City at around noon, and that's super low. And it just is, again, an example of how, runnable, or how this first half of this course, it's easy to kind of, not easy, but you can get through that, yet you've got this challenging second half that can really eat you up. And I think, it's a uniquely challenging course that sometimes you maybe just have to go experience to really know what it's all about.
Yeah, one last thought. I did see the final stat on finishers for the 100K. It was like something like 870.
Okay.
And if they had 1,100 starters and 870 finishers, that's 75%, a little better than that, maybe even. So really impressive by the field.
That's a good finish rate.
Yeah, very impressive. And just in like as I've had a day or so to kind of think about this and think about my performance, I really compare it back to even the 60K when I came and did the 60K the first time, and came in pretty fast into Black Canyon, or into Bumblebee, and struggled for the second half. And then the next year ran a little bit slower into Bumblebee, but had a more complete race. I could see myself going back to Black Canyon and doing something like that, where it's like, okay, I will be maybe a little bit more conservative into Deep Canyon and have a more complete race and a more fulfilling race. Because I think whenever you do something like this, even when you finish, you always think about those things that you left on the table. And I do feel like that eventually I will be completing some unfinished business at Black Canyon. But very happy and content with the day.
Awesome. It's so hard to do. To know how whatever pace you're running in that first half is going to affect you later. And if it's too much or if it's not enough, it's really like, it's not something that is easy to figure out for many people, except for, I will shout out my friend and Air Viper Racing teammate, Ferdinand Clovis, who is the first and only person in the history of Black Canyon to negative split the race. He ran the second half faster than the first half. Yes, he did have some challenges, and I think maybe had run out of either nutrition or hydration at one point in the first half and really had to back off. But sounds like that was an absolute blessing in disguise. He was able to move up throughout the field, landing in 10th place, and 8th, 9th, and 10th males on the men's side all came into the finish within 1 minute of each other. So it was essentially a sprint finish for 8th, 9th, and 10th on the men's side, which is just, when you see some of the times and the paces that are being run for the last 5-10 miles of this race, you're talking about they're down in the 5-minute 5:30 range, and to cover the rocky terrain with 55 miles on your legs is just amazingly impressive. So,
well, and I love that there's enough pros, enough elites that are doing this race. It's competitive enough that a top 10 at Black Canyon is still meaningful. A top 10 at Western gives you something tangible, gives you that like entry the next year. But a top 10 at Black Canyon is starting to be sort of that like, hey, you ran a great race. You ran sub 8 hours and you ran top 10 at Black Canyon. That is a meaningful result. And so people are still fighting, even though the golden tickets are maybe outside of their purview. They're still fighting for every place and fighting for a great race for themselves. And that's really exciting that this is that type of race.
Yeah, and I'm going to petition here and now for Fantasy Free Trail, as we've discussed, to go 10 deep.
10 deep for the 100K, please.
For the 100K. It was only 5 deep this year. So if you're listening, Travis, let's go 10 deep for the 100K. It would be, I think it makes sense. And I think that it's one of those races that's definitely worthy of that. Some argue this race has become more competitive than Western States due to the ability for anyone or many people to enter it versus something like a Western where the field is more selective. So it's something we need to play fantasy down to 10 on. Let's go.
So, Corinne, what can you share about your race? I want to hear how your mindset was going into this race. One of my first questions is, you spent all Saturday just thinking, putting your athlete hat on right now. We can get into the live stream stuff and all that stuff as well later, but putting your athlete hat on, you spent all day Saturday on your feet in the sun. Not ideal. What was your mindset with your athlete hat on Saturday, and then also as you're waking up and getting ready for your race on Sunday?
Good question. I would say that it was hard. It was a little bit difficult for me to get into a racing mindset for this race because I was thinking about so many other things. I was supporting feed athletes that were trying to be super competitive in the 100K. I was out there field commentating and doing that for the first time. So really trying to pay attention and figure out, how I could be a value add to the live stream. I was following my husband's race. I was following all of my friends' races, thinking about their days, and really just, I didn't have a lot of, I thought at first maybe it would be good to not really have to kind of have some distractions. But I think that come Sunday, I was maybe a little bit more tired. I'm going to stop and not make any excuses here because I guess this is a bit of a hot take, but I got a little bit annoyed reading through a lot of justifications on Instagram about people's days. And, I chose to do this. I wanted to be a part of this in many facets. And it is something that I'm still figuring out, that balance of can I work and, be part of the media and race. And I think sometimes I can, and maybe sometimes it does affect my ability to run as well as I want to. But that's okay, because I think, for example, for Javelina, I could have worked, I could have been part of commentary. I chose not to. And I said, I am not working. I am 100% focused on racing this weekend because that was an A race for me. And so I think it's just me learning my own boundaries of kind of setting the expectations with people that I'm around and also myself as to how much I'm going to be involved with other aspects of the race. But I love Black Canyon. It is such a special race. And I think, maybe I underestimated a little bit. Oh, it's just the 50K. It's like, no, you're on a start line with some serious athletes who, even a bit of an international field here. And it was a little bit of a slap in the face when I got going that, oh my God, we're racing. I feel like I am running a road marathon across rocks right now at the effort that I'm pushing. And I did have expectations to run a bit faster than I did from a time standpoint. If I'd hit my goal time, I do think I would have been able to compete for potentially a podium spot. But honestly, the race ran away from me from the get-go. And they say this about the 100K too. I did not feel like maybe I was at a fitness level or a speed level to be able to go out with the very, very front of this pack. I didn't think that would be the right thing for my day. And I ran a consistent race. I had some challenges. My legs got really jello-y and kind of fatigued earlier than I'd hoped they would. But the race ran away from me. And I just was not able to pull back up to, in this short, quote unquote, short of a race, I was not able to climb back up within the field. So I'm happy with the day. I'm a little disappointed in the time and the place that I got, but I ended up 7th. I kind of fought to the finish. And honestly, I actually thought I had placed higher when I crossed the finish line. So that was a little bit disappointing, but I'll take it. It was a great training day, great fast effort, and really just appreciative to be able to race and to be healthy to do it.
Well, and you've said before that you flip flop between the 100K and what was previously the 60K in the last 5 years or 6 years?
5.
Last
This
5
was my
years.
6th time back. Yeah.
6 time back. So was there anything, the fact that they knocked off 10K of it and it wasn't going all the way to Black Canyon City, how did that change your mindset going in, and just in terms of like your preparation and kind of your expectation around racing and wanting to do that?
I'm really glad that it's now a 50K, because the last 10K is, or the 10K you ran it between Deep Canyon and Black Canyon City, is rolling. There's some climbs, there's some technicality. So I mean, I was stoked that it's now a 50K. I think that's great. And I did intend to run earlier miles faster than I ever have previously on the course. And I did that. I actually PR'd from the start to Bumblebee of any time I've ever ran Black Canyon. And then I think that in the future, we always say it, I have to figure out how to just be able to move over that technical terrain at a little faster clip than I was able to, past Bumblebee, 19 miles. You then have these contours, and I was hoping to be able to run maybe low 8-minute pace around that. And I kept looking at my watch, seeing 8:59 and going, dang it. Like, I'm trying really hard right here to run faster in this section, and I'm hitting the same splits that I've always hit here. So that was a little bit, that was a little bit frustrating. I think that it's either you accept that you're going to be at X pace in that section, and therefore you run the slight downhills at the earlier before Bumblebee even faster, or you just really hone in on working on the technical running and the fatigue resistance for, maybe that looks like in training you do some fast miles on a flat surface to begin with, and then you try to run moderate over some
With some
technical
hard
terrain.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. So I think that's what I do in the future. I still think it's unfinished. I still a goal in the future for me will be to run under 4 hours at that 50K.
I love it. Well, maybe you'll break your streak of flip flopping and do the 50K again next year.
I think I might jump back in the 100K next year.
100K? Okay. All right. Well, what I will say about that 10K that you're talking about from Deep Canyon to Black Canyon City is that it is way more similar to the rest of the race than it is to the previous 50K. So the previous 50K, like, I almost think that the race is like perfectly chopped now. You've got that first 50K into Deep Canyon. I mean, it's still technical. There's still lots of technicality to it. But I do think that 10K that you're talking about, extending that to that Black Canyon City, that portion of the race is so much more similar to the rest of the race that I think that they've developed some really neat event if they keep it in this location. And, you'd like to say like, oh, can't they keep it here forever? I'm sure they would have loved to keep it at Black Canyon City if they could, but when developers have other plans, like event companies like Aravaipa have to shift. And we like the history of keeping things consistent and doing things, but they're the ones that have to kind of move and shake and do something like that. One other note that I noticed about your race, I think you ran Antelope to Hidden Treasure. It's a 5-mile segment on Strava.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking, and not only did you do your fastest time between those two, but it was also a top 10 overall time, and everyone seemingly had uploaded from the previous day. So you ran something like 7-minute pace between there.
Okay.
So I think that portion of the race you ran as well as you could have, and maybe it's pressing on the road on the first part, or like you're saying, around the contours and things like that. But again, there's always going to be things for everybody to look at and to improve. So
yeah, well, thanks for that little boost and compliment. No, that was a good section, and
a lot of people ran that. Everyone ran that downhill, and you're on the top 10 on the overall. So
that's pretty cool. I will say, like, it felt like we were racing. I mean, anytime I came up on a female competitor and was behind there was no like, oh, let me get out of the way for you. It was like, if I'm gonna have to make a decisive move if I want to pass this person, because their goal right now is to hold me off. And I love that. It's so cool. Like I'm really glad that like the sport has become that. I went back and forth with a woman who I am now friends with on Instagram, Melody Gilbert, and she's a normal athlete out of Canada. And we traded places 3 or 4 times. I would catch her in aid stations. She would catch back up to me. Has maybe one of the quickest cadences that I have ever seen on trail. Just this like Energizer bunny looking, just the way she moved over the train. It was like really cool because I have the opposite of a like really long stride. But it was really cool to just like kind of be out there, like observing somebody else who had a little bit different style than me and going back and forth with them and encouraging each other, and but also very much feeling like we both wanted to.
Yeah, you didn't have to exchange words out there. You can be friends afterwards. It's fine.
Well, and I said nice work, and she said let's go. And then afterwards she told me that it's hard for her to speak English when her brain is tired during a race. And so I was like, I totally get that. I had a feeling that maybe it wasn't her first language, and
Alley,
that's so
alley.
yeah. So it was cool. But yeah, it was definitely a brutal, tiring day and tiring race. I was going to speak just a little bit to the field commentating experience if we want to shift gears. But yeah, again, just shout out to Mountain Outpost for what they've created. Every year, it seems this live stream gets better and better. I had watched the full live stream from last year prior to coming in because I really wanted to kind of remember, the spots we were at, what people were talking about, how that field commentary had gone, because I've only ever been in the studio. And I knew it might be a little bit challenging, like not to be able to see all the screens and see what everybody at home was seeing, and go back and forth between like, when should I talk and when is the studio going to talk, not talking over people. Shout out to Corinne Malcolm. I did talk to her briefly at the expo and just said, hey, like what, any tips for being in the field? She's like, don't worry about talking over us. Like what you just talk and you just tell us what you're seeing. And really, she said that what they want to know from the field is kind of, what do people look like? Really, those are the observations they can't get in the studio, is like when you look at somebody's face, when you look at somebody's salt on their kit, or if they've fallen, or how fatigued they look, or how good of spirits they're in, kind of just trying to relay observations from the runners was really, the main thing that they're hoping to get there.
So
And so
less
hopefully I did
less
that.
about the who and the placing and the order, and more about the vibe and the feeling and
Mhm.
kind of the impression that you're getting with boots on the
Yep.
ground.
Exactly. Exactly. So I went to like 5 different aid stations. I went to Antelope Mesa. We had a battery issue. Shout out to David, my field camera guy, who was troubleshooting, trying to figure things out. We couldn't get the feed going at Antelope Mesa. But we got it for Hidden Treasure. And then we were on at Hidden Treasure. We went to Bumblebee after that, Black Canyon City, and then Table Mesa.
Okay, so you skipped Deep Canyon and you just
I
went
did.
straight to okay.
Because this year the Mountain Outpost studio, the live stream studio, was at Deep Canyon. So they had people there, and there was basically one. Yeah. So Brett Hornig and I I essentially kind of followed Brett. He was following the men's race. I was following more of the women's race. And then when we got to the point of Black Canyon City, kind of separated further. He followed the men's race, and then I went and followed the women to Table Mesa. Although I still, with the way the women ran this race, I still saw many of the men that were in the top, 20 out at Table Mesa. I forgot how actually Table Mesa was quite a energetic and lively aid station. I had it in my mind, maybe just from watching the live stream, that it was like a little quieter. We're not many people there, and it was like hyped. I mean, Jim Walmsley and Jess Brazo were out there crewing Abbey Hall. Like, there were a lot of people, and there's like a lot of energy, and actually really good energy. And I think it's maybe because it's just like, this is the last push. Like, this is where things are, you're going to make or break. essentially your race. And there was so much action at the front of both of the fields. There were massive shakeups on the men's side at Table Mesa. We had Eli Hemming come in, Seth Ruling, Eli looking very tired and like he was maybe starting to kind of fray a bit. Seth Ruling famously throwing up like right before he got into that aid station, people wondering, is that okay? Is that going to ruin his day? What's going on with that? And then the random baller, Will Murray, just starting to roll people up and everyone going, who is this guy? Where is this coming from?
Give us some info on this guy.
Is he going to win this race? Because he is moving up through this field and showing no signs of stopping. And then the chase pack really that were 4, 5, 6 any of them really could have potentially run up into a golden ticket. And so that was really exciting. So it was awesome to be part of it. I did have a little trouble holding myself back from actually I really wanted to crew people.
Like
I really wanted to help people. I really wanted to cheer for people. And so I was really trying to just stay in the zone of, okay, I am commentating. I am the reporter here and not jumping in, but that's okay. That's just part of it. So it was a great experience. I was really grateful to have it. And I think it's both things are fun. It's fun to be in the studio and be able to kind of just, be in there and look things up and grab stats and come up with just random, topics to banter about. But it's also really cool to be out there because you feel like you get to experience the race more.
Yeah, that's great. Talk just a tiny bit about the women's race, because I know and I had a little bit of a vested interest in Tara, following her on the high performance team at the feed, but also Riley Brady just seemed to maybe run away with it a little bit, looking at the finished times, and I wasn't sure if that was how it felt out at the different sites, or if if they were really just having a great day themselves.
Yeah. So early on, I was not surprised and very excited to see Mary Denholm leading the race.
Yes.
She set a pace that I believe
Women can run.
that pace led to these fast times. And not surprising that she went out well under course record pace and was 2 or 3 minutes ahead of the rest of the women's field for a while. At one point, maybe even more, maybe even 5 minutes ahead. I think that I mentioned to Katie Asmuth around Antelope Mesa. Is it Antelope or Hidden Treasure? One of those early aid stations that she was about 9 or 10 minutes back of the leader. And that's pretty early to be that far back. So the pace was very hot from the gun. Tara had a bit of as she said, an early low, but she was still sitting in, I want to say 4th or 5th in those first couple aid stations. So she wasn't out of the mix, but maybe thought that she would be or wanted to be a bit closer to the front. And it really just played out, such that I think Mary ended up succumbing to the heat, was passed by Riley maybe 4 or 5 miles outside of Deep Canyon. And so that's when we saw the lead change. And then into Deep Canyon, we ended up seeing Mary, stop her race. Riley was well ahead, but there was definitely a chase pack. And then I think that Tara, it was definitely not Black Canyon City, but maybe between Black Canyon City and Gloriana that I had heard, Tara has moved into second. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. And then we had MK Sullivan and Abby Hall and Becca Bramley was actually not leading, but in the very front pack through the first 2 or 3 aid stations. And then it just started to kind of evolve a little bit from there. I think Tara had an absolutely baller day out there. And it was, in my mind, a massive breakthrough race for her from a competitive standpoint. But Riley just did not slow down. I mean, I interviewed the women's leaders afterwards on the live stream, and Riley ran the fastest time from Table Mesa to the finish by 7 minutes. 7 minutes faster than anybody else ever has in the women's field. So was able to close super hard. And as we all know, maybe partly because the conditions were good. There was not snow in that first 6 miles or like muddiness, but a half an hour, a 30-minute course record by Riley, like absolutely bonkers how fast that is. So I can't wait to see what they do at Western. This is really, really exciting. And Tara going more than 15 minutes under the previous course record as well.
Yeah, and Tara quieting the crowd that says you can't go from long trail FKTs to fast ultras, back to fast ultras once you go there. I think that crowd is very quiet at the moment.
Absolutely. Max Joloff ran the 50K. He won Moab 240. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but Satisfy athlete. He won Moab 240 last year. He ran the 50K, and I believe he was like, if not in the top 10, like 12th or 13th.
Yeah, he was in the top 20 guys.
At 50K.
Right around 4 hours. Like,
I mean,
ran real fast there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you can do both. So it's super cool to see. And we're in a very exciting time in trail and ultra running right now.
Should we just real quick run down the Castle Rock Run Club results?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we talked a little bit about Jacob. Jacob was the breakout performance of the crew. And I don't have his exact time in front of me, but I think he ran something like, was it like
10:29?
10 and a half hours. Okay. Awesome.
He was going for sub 10:30, made it by 30 seconds. He is a master at goal setting, and I am going to do it. I'm going to hit that goal.
Oh my gosh. Good for him. And then Graham and Justin also had finishes in the 100K. Graham, not necessarily the day he wanted, but he got out there and had some successes with nutrition and hydration.
Did not throw up, which is a huge win.
Absolutely. So he got a finish in the 100K. Our friend Justin Henry, also a finish in the 100K, continuing his streak of being able to get into the Western States Lottery as well. And I think maybe left some things out on the table and had some things to learn. I followed up with our fourth finish in the 100K in a little over 14 hours, like I mentioned. And then our friends Todd and Chris both decided to run their 50K and then enjoy the rest of the day crewing. And one of my favorite quotes is from our friend Chris Fanant, and he said, "I had a great race. I ran a great 50K. The only problem was I signed up for the wrong race."
I had a great day. I just signed up for the wrong distance.
That's exactly right. And sometimes it's like that. To their credits, their spirits were high through the rest of the day, helping support the rest of the crew. And we all had a great weekend. Fantastic there. And then if you want to run through the 50K results, we had some members of the club run their first ever ultras this time as well.
Yeah, we had Adam Dill and Gretchen Dill, married couple, and cousin. Adam is Todd's cousin, running their first 50Ks, longest they'd gone, farthest they'd gone. They both finished. Adam had a little bit of some body stuff going on with his knee, but still was able to get through it, get it done. His nutrition, he said, was also really on point, which I'm happy I was able to lend a little bit of advice on that. So Adam finished 6:19. Gretchen came in also just a super solid run, 5:53. And then, and of course, I ran. There were who else? And Raquel.
And Jess.
Yes, Raquel Harper, also from Castle Rock Run Club. 5:16, a super solid 28th female race. Jess Burke, who I was nervous to race because I know how dang fast she is. She ran a 4:27 and was F10. Fun fact, myself and Jess and Raquel went 1, 2, 4 in the women's masters division for the 50K, which is super cool. And all great friends and just people that I'm really excited to continue training with throughout the year.
Well, and a quick shout out to you. You also helped coach Adam and Gretchen up in this build-up. And for Gretchen, it was maybe her first attempt at a build for an ultra, but this was not Adam's first attempt at a build to an ultra marathon. And so, kudos to just you guys got to the line together healthy and able to complete the event. And I'm really proud of Adam and proud of those finishes, and really the whole crew for, being together and just enjoying that time and having great races.
Yep. It was awesome. It was awesome. All right. So should we tease a little bit? So Ultra Uncovered, for anyone who has not, and thank you for listening to this point, we would really appreciate if you would follow and subscribe. We are on YouTube as well, and looking to continue growing the listenership. And, we hear the best way to do that is if you can either share the pod with someone or give it a rating or review. So thank you so much to everyone listening. This podcast about a year ago, with one of the main intentions being to create a library and a resource for ultra runners in the future who are trying to find information about races from an in-depth standpoint, hearing from people that maybe didn't, not necessarily just those who have won the race, but others who have firsthand experience. We're going to be also talking to maybe some race directors this year about some of the races we've chosen. So last year we covered 7, what we're calling evergreen episodes on specific races that we thought needed to be highlighted. And this year we are going to do the same, if not more. But we've got a couple of really exciting races that we're going to be talking about in the near future and doing detailed podcasts on. The first one is, drumroll, Russ.
Chuckanut 50K in Bellingham, Washington. One of the oldest ultras. It's got such great results. What I would recommend if you're looking for results, though, go to ultrarunningmag.com and look the results at Chuckanut. You can really see a comparison and a who's who of ultra runners from the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. You got early Sage candidate coming in there and running fast at Chuckanut. You've got, all sorts of great ultra running names have finished this race. So we're excited to be talking about Chuckanut, and we can't talk about Chuckanut without talking to Chrissy Mail. So that's going to be fantastic to be able to.
Can't wait to learn all about it from an absolute expert in the current race director, Chrissy. This is going to be super exciting. We are going to be recording that here very shortly. It will come out 4 to 6 weeks before the race actually happens so that you can get super hyped on what's going to go down at Chuckanut this year and decide if maybe this is a race you want to sign up for in the future. And then we are going to also have a very detailed podcast around Cocodona 250. I mean, the race that just keeps getting more and more stacked, more and more visible. And it is a race this year that has a field of who's who of ultra running. We are super excited to talk to a couple of people for Cocodona. You're gonna have to stay tuned to find out who that is, but I've commentated at the race for the past 2 years and gotten to know it pretty well, and it is gorgeous, it is unique, it is so well put on, and it has maybe perhaps one of the longest live streams that exists in ultra running of 5-6 days, constant talking. We get into Aravaipa after dark goofiness. There's a lot that happens during Cocodona week.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Can't wait. So until next time, this is Ultra Uncovered. I'm Russell Ditzworth signing off for Corinne Chalvoy. Thank you.